Greetings and welcome to the first of a set of webinars titled Centering the Voices of African Migrants in African European Union Migration, which is organized jointly by the University of Johannesburg Institute for Pan-African Thought and Conversation, IPATC, South Africa, and the Nordic Africa Institute, NAI, Sweden. Both events aim to provide a platform to bridge the gap between African and EU policymakers and African migrants in the light of the 2018 UN Global Compact for safe, regular, and orderly migration, and the publication of a UNDP report, Scaling Fences. The webinars further aim to consolidate a 100-member community of practice on implementing the UN Global Compact, which was established in 2019 by IPATC. I have with me today two speakers who will frame the discussions on the experiences and voices of African migrants in the EU. First, I have Mr. Joseph Peters, a migrant from Sierra Leone, affiliated to the Joel Nafuma Refugee Center in Italy. And I also have Dr. Joy Kitgekwa, the strategic advisor to the regional director of the UNDP Regional Bureau for Africa in New York. I welcome you to the event once again. There are a few guidelines I would like you to be aware of. The speakers will talk for 15 minutes each. We will take about 4 or 5 comments and questions at a time during the question and answer segment of the program, and we will also allow the speakers to respond. I will lastly call on Dr. Jespers, our partner and a senior researcher at the Nordic African Institute in Sweden, to make the closing remark. Before calling on Mr. Joseph Peters to speak, kindly permit us to show a very short ongoing documentary which was put together by Professor Efremov on Mr. Peters' place in the history of migration in Rome, Italy. Mr. Kevin, over to you to show the video.
Welcome to Rome, capital of Italy. My name is Peters Joseph, a Sierra Leonean by nationality that was here as a refugee, but to God be the glory, today I've been granted a political asylum. You, as a refugee that is here, it is with all pleasure that I will guide you today. I know you leave the country because of different purposes. It might be because of war. It might be because of political differences. It might be because of persecution. It might be because of your sex agenda. And one thing I want you to know, and that I would like you to fix in your head, this country was started by a refugee. His name is Anes. He is an indigene of Troy. There was a war in their country and the city was burned down, and he escaped with his dad, an old man that he took along with him in his neck, and with his child.
Thank you so much for the patience to see the video. May I invite Mr. Joseph Peters to make a 15-minute presentation. Mr. Peters, over to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, sir. First of all, before I proceed, with no apology, let me just thank God Almighty that makes it possible for me not only to be in your midst, but for me to be alive today. I give him the glory. When I was asked to talk about centering the voices of African migrants in Africa European Union, I thought it wisely, it's time for me to give back. One thing I believe on is not only for me to be receiving, but it's for me to give back. So I just thank God, and I never take it for granted. So, but for me to start, let me introduce myself. My name is Joseph Peters, a Sierra Leonean by nationality, presently resides in Italy, precisely in Rome. I'm father and I'm a husband. And to take you back, talking about centering the voices of African migrants in Africa or European Union, I thank God, I know it's a subject that we need to talk about, and that is what we're doing exactly. To start back, I remembered when I left my beloved land, Sierra Leone, 2004. It was so painful. I left Sierra Leone with tears in my eyes, because actually it was not the time for me to leave my beloved land. Not only my beloved land, people that I grew up with, my friends, relatives, my dad, my mom, but because of one reason beyond my control, I was forced to leave my beloved land, Sierra Leone, to travel to a country that I did not know. I did not know the people that are there, and I knew very well there are some hindrances, there are some problems I will meet on the way. What I did, and I thank God that I'm still alive today. And first of all, I left Sierra Leone to Guinea-Conakry. And in Guinea-Conakry, I found out that this is not the place that I'm supposed to be because of security reason. Then I traveled to Libya. In Libya, actually, that's why I said before I started, thank God I'm still alive today. In Libya, it was just like, for me, it was just like a hell in the world, because I remembered traveling from a town called Sabah, intending to come to the capital city, which is Tripoli. They caught me on the way, and after they caught me on the way, they sold me to a slave master. I'm sorry. So I was there. They sold me to a slave master. I worked over 6 months. I'm sorry. I worked over 6 months without no payment. I'm sorry. I worked tirelessly. Even when I would be tired, they would force me to work. I worked for over 6 months. It was not easy, but thank God I came out alive. And the boss one day, he just watched me and he said, you know what? He said, I know you're tired. It's time for you to go. And he just put me in the city and he said, go find your way. I thank God. That's why I said I'm still alive, because I'm still alive. I thank God because of that. And when the war started in Libya, actually during that period, I was in Tripoli. It was 2011, I was in Tripoli when the war started. It was not yet in Tripoli, the capital city. So the government of Sierra Leone provided a flight, and they said every Sierra Leonean to return back home. But in my own case, it was different. I returning back home, what I would face is prison, and the only option that I have was for me to travel through the Mediterranean Sea, take the other part of the world, which is Italy. And I knew very well I cannot swim. I knew very well that I cannot swim. And as a Sierra Leonean, I know what it means to be in a country where there is war. Because in Sierra Leone, remember, we faced a war of over 10 years. I see young girl amputated. I saw a lot of atrocity. So I don't want that to get that same time experience. So I decided, I say, what I will do, I will not return back to Sierra Leone, but let me just take myself and cross the Mediterranean Sea. And I did. I remember it was the 10th of April, 2011. That good evening, we were on the camp, and We took the boat, we were on the boat, and they gave us swimming suits. And this swimming suit, I knew very well I don't need it because I knew I cannot swim and I don't need it. So my own swimming suit, I gave it to somebody else. And on the way, I knew I cannot swim and it's only God that will save me. I call upon God and indeed He saved me. I came to another part of the world in Europe, which is Italy. I entered Italy 2011, the 11th of April. And the 11th of April, they took us at one camp in Lampedusa. And that camp is only for irregular refugees. And among one of them. Well, being with them, actually, I still have courage. Being with them, I still have zeal. Being with them, I knew I have a purpose of still being alive. So I encourage myself with the word of God. I encourage people that were around me. But I don't know, it will be different what I faced back in Libya to what I will face in Italy. When I was in school, we talked about democracy. When I was in school, I knew that they came with democracy. They taught us a lot about democracy. Being in Europe, I know it will be easy. That was my thought. I thought it would be easy. I thought it would be easy. Then from Lampedusa, they brought us to Catania. And in Catania, in the refugee camp, I spent a year in that refugee camp. And later, they granted me to be asylum refugee, political asylum refugee. Then now I'm no more a irregular migrant, but a regular migrant. But still, the journey still continue. I don't know if it was because of my skin, my color, or I don't know, maybe the way during those days, the way I speak the language, this will be different, the way they speak it. So I was treated differently. In all this, I did not regret because I knew very well I have a cause. I live in my house. There is a cause that makes me to leave Sierra Leone. And I met many refugees on the way, many refugees on the way. You will meet them, you ask them, say, brother, tell me the reason of you leaving your country. They will come with their own reason and with their own story. Every man has a purpose. Some flee their country because of bad governance. Maybe the policy in their country entrench people to poverty. Some say the system is not working. People fleeing war, which might be one of rebel war, maybe conflict of political conflict, tribal, religious, and also between family members. At times, some of our people, they are deceived by their loved ones. This one, which is more painful, you will see a refugee without even having a shelter. It will dress well. It will go and stand in front of one of the beautiful, building around him. It will snap a picture and it will send that picture back home to his loved one and say, brother, just take the Mediterranean Sea. If you come to Europe, it will be well. And it's all lie. It's all lie. Some of them, even something to eat is a problem. But they will pretend as if all is well. They will call their loved ones. They will ask them, come, it's going to be fine. And what is more serious in it? Because even they did not have a shelter, they did not have a house, they will call you to come. And you too, you will risk your life, take that Mediterranean Sea. Maybe when you cross over, you take your phone and you call them. They will not even answer the call. You will see many refugees in the train station sitting down there, even for them to have food to eat, especially when they are irregular migrants without a document. It is not easy. Let me come back to my life. Thank God I'm married to a beautiful wife and I have 2 kids here with me. Even my kids, them going to school, my kids, they have Italian citizenships. But in an era like this, when we're talking about pandemic, we're talking about this COVID, I observed that very recently when they want to test them for COVID. My own kids, they will screen them properly. They will screen them properly. Maybe they will take the machine, use it once, twice, thrice, I don't know if it's because of their color or what, but they will be screened properly, which is different from other kids. There was a time when my wife was seriously angry, and I told her that your action now, it will make the way for our kids. Please just calm down, let it go. It's gonna be fine. One day I traveled to a country that I would not like to mention the name because of one reason or the other. At the airport, I left my family. It was last year, October. I left my family back home for an assignment. At the airport, I was thoroughly checked up. The same people that we have the same passport, same document, they will come, they will just allow them to pass. They will just watch it, allow them to pass. Because of a reason that is best known to them, they will hold my passport, watch it left, watch it right, and they will ask you the question, how did you have this passport? Who gave you this passport? I was thoroughly checked up by many, many officials. And what happened? At the end, they did a test on me, COVID test. It was on Sunday, I remember that Sunday. They did that COVID test on me. Then on Monday, I was in my hotel. When they called me, they said, are you Mr. Joseph Peters? I said, yes. They said, sir, sorry to say that you are COVID positive. I said, what? You are COVID positive. I said, what do you want me to do next? They said, just wait in the hotel. We are sending ambulance for you. Then I took my phone. I called my wife back home. I said, this is the bad news. They said I'm COVID positive. So now you take the kids, go and do test on you and the kids. And she went there, they did the test, they were negative. So I started asking myself the question, was it because I was thoroughly checked up? I met somebody on the way because they took me to more than 4 offices, checked my passport. They were not satisfied. They even did fingerprints on me again. I said, but this passport is mine. The picture is mine. So I started asking myself the question, was it because of the thoroughly checked up that I contacted this COVID-19? Well, I said, but to God be the glory. I know my God will see me through. And indeed, my God saw me through. Then I experienced something in that camp that I went, because I was working as an interpreter for a particular organization. Among even refugees, they treat them differently. They have some refugees, some migrants that they will give them canopy. And in that canopy, there will be no heater for them to eat themselves. They have no access to wash with hot water. It was unbearable. And some other refugees, they will give them container. In that container, they have access to hot water, they have bed and all this stuff. I said, wow. So there is still difference. One day I was moving around with one brother, a Sierra Leonean. We passed along a shop and he told me that, he said, this store, he said the owner of this store will not allow any migrant to enter this store. I said, what? I said, in the area I said, no, it's not possible. I said, well, let me just enter the store. And I entered the store. And something happened. I moved up and I come back down. I asked the owner of the store, I was searching for something and she helped me. And for me to confirm myself if what they told me was right or wrong. And I asked her, I said, they told me that you don't allow migrants to enter your store. And she said, sir, yes. I said, why? She said they don't smell good. The way they dress very roughly. And she said, if one among them just enter my store now, the odor will be rough. I said, wow. But the cause was because they don't have access to hot water. So being a migrant in an European country or wherever you find yourself, it's not easy. So thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Peters. Without wasting time and without putting any comments, please join me to welcome Dr. Joy Kitkekwa to make her presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Akinola. Joseph, thank you very much for sharing your story. Indeed, to God be the glory. I have been requested this morning to talk about scaling fences, a recent report, a 2019 report from UNDP. And it really seeks to talk about the voices of irregular African migrants to Europe. So in this presentation, my role will really be to share the key findings. But let's look at the method first. What this report did in terms of a method of research is to deploy quantitative questionnaires, talking to migrants in Europe about their life at home, their life in Europe, the motivations for their leaving, the aspirations that they had, the journey to Europe, and where they see the future. So the target sample are people who arrived in Europe through an irregular route, who had been living in Europe for more than 6 months, and whose primary reason for going to Europe was development related. And so interviews were conducted in over 70 locations across 13 European countries. I think 25% of those were in Spain, and then you had about 15% in Germany, Belgium, and others. In terms of scope, you also had quite a sizable part, I think 47% in Northern Europe and then 43% in Southern Europe. So the caveats, a non-random sampling methodology was applied, the results only applicable to the scaling fences sample, and we'll get to that in a minute. And then of course there was an influence of asylum applications on the responses that were given. So the primary sample was 1970 people, 1,970 people, although our total interview group was 3,000. Respondents came from 38 African countries, now living in 13 European countries. In terms of gender, you had 77% male and 23% female. 91% came by sea, 7% by land, and 2% by air in terms of. So what are the key findings? We find that in fact, migration is a reverberation and echo of incomplete development progress in Africa. This means basically that migration is being pushed in Africa by the development and the progress in Africa. That when regions develop, when things start to get better, people start to look for more. It's interesting to see, and we'll get to that many people already had jobs, but the push for more, it's almost like the development aspirations outpaced what was available possibly at home. 85% came from urban environments. 77% felt their voices were unheard at home, they could not influence, and so on and so forth. We also see that half of the respondents left in spite of having a job. So it's not just about jobs. For 66% of those that were earning, the prospect of earning at home was not a constraining factor to the decision to leave. The point being that even if they were earning, they saw the prospect of more and better, and therefore took the decision to scale the fences within the metaphorical fences within the way of their expectation of what could be better across shore. We also find that migration is an investment, a big investment on the continent, in the sense that family, friends invest, providing financial support for the cost that one takes. 53% said that received financial cost from family and friends. We also see that 93% experienced danger during the journey. We've heard the story of Joseph. So danger is part of the journey of migration. We asked the question, would you not have gone had you known? And only 2% said previous knowledge of this would have prevented them from traveling. We also find that 38% of the respondents are earning in Europe. And of those that are earning, 38% do so without legal right to work. And there we try to capture some of the sectors in which they are employed. Cleaning, housekeeping, looking after the elderly, factories, farming, working in hotels and so on. We also found that 78% of those earning send money home, and remittances, which is that part they send home, represent over 90% of real income at home for those who were working. Despite all of the deprivation, because the report also found that there's a lot of material deprivation when people land in Europe, from the perspective of work, access to work, from the perspective of housing, as has been described also by Joseph. But despite deprivation and loneliness, a majority still feel positive about their future in Europe. We found that I think 42% had gone without food, 40% felt unsafe in their accommodations, 37% had gone without needed medication, and 77%, did not have a way and means to earn money. So the attitudes to return, it's interesting. Regression analysis finds that those earning would be more likely, more willing to leave Europe, return to Africa. However, a development deficit in Africa motivates people to migrate, but it also keeps them from returning. And so part of the solutions is also how much we can fast track the pace of development within the continent. So what are the key takeaways? The report confirms that migration is closely linked to incomplete development. That Africa is developing, but it's not developing fast enough. And therefore, these people do not see their aspirations attainable on the continent. In a sense, therefore, their aspirations are outpacing the development of the continent. So the pace of how far Africa goes, and this is a demonstration of human development indices on the continent, that many countries are still have a lot to do in terms of pulling up or improving conditions for human development. The second is the point I've made before, that ambition has outpaced the opportunities at home. And so in a sense, the lack of opportunities is a metaphoric fence around these people. And so they scale them by taking the boat and starting those journeys that Joseph described, in the hope that on the other side of the fence is a better life. It's not just about job creation at home. We've seen that many people had jobs, they were earning competitively relative to conditions at home, but they wanted something better, something bigger. This is not across the board. Of course, there'll be exceptions, but it's not just about the jobs. There are other things that push people to move, including what we've said about the fact that they don't feel heard at home. They don't feel like they can influence the direction of things going on at home and so on. We've also seen that migration is a family-level livelihood strategy, and that families invest in the process, enabling diversification of household economies. It's also true that migration and how it is managed demonstrates visible turbulence created by the policy vacuum of migration governance when it comes to where these people go. This is a photo of how some of the migrants find themselves living. So in terms of recommendations, one is transformative development, expanding opportunities and choice in Africa. That investments should reach that point where the ambition is better matched by the possibilities on the continent. That Africans can have reasonable chances for their dreams to be fulfilled on the continent. So investment in those enablers that will create opportunities for choice within Africa. And it's also interesting to recall that a lot of migration takes place actually within the continent. So from ungoverned to governed migration, and this is the idea of thinking about the reality that migrants are moving for many reasons, but we've also seen some of the numbers of those that are working. It speaks to the fact that there is space within the European market for African migrants. We've seen the sectors in which they're engaged. So if the reality is that there is a market for the services that are provided by the migrants, then perhaps the conversation should move to how do you govern it? What are the regimes that can facilitate that sort of movement so that people are protected as they make a contribution to the economies, as we have seen. And in order to do that, you'll need to build a new discourse on migration that allows for some of these realities to be spoken about for the situation that they are, so that the debate can allow for a new type of conversation, since prevention alone has perhaps demonstrated how far it can go. And so that is the end of the presentation, and I'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joy. And thank you once again, Mr. Joseph Peters, for sharing your story with us. And thank you, Dr. Joy, for providing context even to the story that was shared by Mr. Joseph Peters. Please, before moving on to the Q&A section, question and answer section, please permit me to invite everyone to the visual launch of the edited volume on mediating xenophobia in Africa, scheduled to hold on 30 March 2021. The poster was displayed at the beginning of the event, and it will also be displayed at the end of the event. I know people are trying to put their thoughts together, but I will quickly advise that you direct your question first to Dr. Joy, and we'll come back to Joseph Peters. So please, if you have a question for Dr. Joy, you can put up your hand, not physically, by pressing the raise hand icon on the Zoom. You will see a place where they say raise hand. Once you do that, then we will recognize you to either give a comment in respect to the presentation of Dr. Joy, or ask her a question. I know she's waiting, she's willing to respond to any of the question. Thank you. Please, you can just signify by raising up your hand. I can see the hands of Papa So.
Yes, it's Papa So from NAI in Uppsala, Sweden. I just wanted to ask to Dr. Joy, what the motivation, the objective of the UNPD study, because I didn't get it very clear. And then another question would be, as I have seen that half of the migrants, they come from urban environments. So how could this be explained? Because most of the migrants, some of the time they come from rural areas, but they get the cities, and then after the cities, maybe they went they go to Europe. So just those two questions I wanted to know. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We can take about 3 or 4 more, then Dr. Joy will respond. And later, Mr. Joseph will respond. Can I see other hands?
Thank you so much for a very, very important report and seminar. My question is about the methodology of this kind of really eye-opening report. I'm not familiar with the issue of migration. It's not my area of expertise, but I'm curious about some of the results which seem really surprising, particularly around the willingness of migrants to, their kind of stickiness about returning or viewing, saying to themselves that they would still take the journey, even though they now know how dangerous and perilous it would be. So I'm very curious about if there are other explanations around biases in the respondents and how they report. So maybe the sample of people or migrants in general who make it this far are really invested, emotionally invested in a kind of narrative, and are unwilling, for the sake of their survival, unwilling to or unable to kind of regret coming. It's a decision that they've taken, and it's hard for them to kind of show regret. So I'm curious about biases in the respondents' responses and maybe other nuances that had come up in the interview material. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph, for your story. I have just a question. During my field research with returnees from Libya to Mali in 2012 in Mali, they said that they were encouraged in 2011, before the end of the Gaddafi regime in Libya, to take the sea in order to get to Europe. Did you have such an experience? If so, how?
I just want to ask, is it Dr. Joy, a question. In terms of the studies that have been done by the UN, are you putting them all together? Because I was on the UN high-level panel on migration that was chaired by the former president of Liberia. And we did a study and we had a report, but I don't know, because some of the things that have come out of this came out of our report. So I just want to know if those reports tend to be put together, and so it can enable more discourse, more discussion around these issues.
Good morning. I am Talam Sila from Mali. I am a lecturer in the university. And I want first to thank Joseph for his story, but I have just one question. During my field research with returnees from Libya to Mali in 2012, they said they were encouraged in 2011, before the end of Gaddafi regimes, to go to Europe. I want to know if Joseph experienced the same things. Thanks.
Thank you. Can we come back to you, Dr. Joy, to respond to those questions?
Yes, thank you very much for all of the questions from Papa. So from Amanda, from the mother of Baloyi, Madame Baloyi, and from Almami. You know, so if we come to the motivation, why a report of this nature? I think it's precisely because migration is a development issue. That at the heart of migration are people. And that we tend to look at and create solutions for things that we understand, things that are sort of neatly tied in a box in terms of definition. And so, you know, you have the refugees, you have, you know, people who will ask for work permits and that sort of thing. But no one was talking about the irregularity as a factual situation. So UNDP's motivation in this was really to say, we need to speak to these people, convince them to tell their story, synthesize it and put it out there in a manner that's strong on the analytics, so that you can have a policy discussion around what to do in a situation of irregular migrants. This is the report we're talking about. I don't know if the lighting helps. Scaling fences, voices of irregular migrants, irregular African migrants to Europe. I think the irregularity of it was critical because these people are there, they exist. They're also contributing to these economies. But how do we find the right policy responses to respond to protect, to facilitate what's happening to these people? And so the motivation was very much around bringing the subject to the table. The report was launched in 2019, and we had an initial long sort of roadshow in Europe, you know, speaking in different European capitals about the findings of the report to different audiences, precisely to raise that, open the eyes of everybody, the eyes and ears of everybody, that these things are happening and they demand attention. the situation of irregular migrants. In terms of urban, how come most are urban? It's precisely because the report actually finds that most of the migrants are the reflection of the best that Africa is offering, in the sense that these are educated people, these are people who have jobs, these are people who have bigger dreams than is possible, than the prospects for touching and realizing are at home. And so in a sense, the limitations are the fences. And so they scale them, they break them down by taking a decision to migrate ashore in the hope that something better is there. It follows very much this idea that migration in Africa is a reflection of the progress that's taking place, but not taking place fast enough, not taking place in a manner that is evenly distributing the gains. And so people are moving. When you find people in the urban areas, typically they would be employed, most of them, not most of them, there's a lot of urban unemployment, but these people that we interviewed are people who have been educated, people who are working, but people who want to move to get something better. And so that is really an important nuance, that most of the people that were interviewed were actually from the urban areas. This is the reality of where they are. It's not to say that there are no people from the rural areas that then look at, of course, converge within urban to exit, but the vast majority of the 1970 people that were the primary sample had been in urban areas. Then we talk about the question of the journey, Amanda. Indeed, the results spoke about the fact that over 90% experienced danger. And that was indeed also the contradiction. Had you known, would you have taken the journey? 2% said it would have affected their decision. I think that should tell us something forward-looking around the bigger responsibility for interventions that reduce push factors on the continent. Because the big message here is that people are moving. People are moving a lot within Africa. People are also going a lot to Europe. The reason why they're going is they do not see their dreams fulfilled at home. The opportunities are not sufficient. And now, of course, with COVID, I'm sure it's worse in terms of the setback, the socioeconomic setback. And so for me, rather than interrogate the why and the biases, and of course, perhaps, as we said in the caveats at the start, there are many layers that could have influenced the answering. But I think the forward-looking question, the forward-looking solution is really what can be done to increase the opportunities on the continent within Africa. And I think there are many, that's where the policy conversation should be. And in that conversation, we should talk a lot more about how to create jobs, how to industrialize the continent, how to innovate in the continent, how to trade more within the continent, so that there's less push. People will always move, but let them not move because of a forced inability to envision the possibility of success on the continent. Then the question around the reports, yes, indeed, I think there is all of these reports are produced from the direction of seeking to influence policy, to influence dialogue, to force conversations around these issues. And so this report is available on the UNDP website, Scaling Fences, but indeed the work of the panel as well would be available as well on various UN websites. And I think the point you're making is different, is that it should all be brought in one place to facilitate joined up and coherent type of influence on the narratives. So that point is well taken. And then the final question from Almami Silla, I think was directed to Joseph.
Thank you, Dr. Joy. I know Mr. Joseph Peters is also waiting to respond to the two questions they asked him. Maybe Mr. Peters, will you quickly respond to the questions? Then I will come back to the audience as they prepare to ask further questions and to give comments. I acknowledge the presence of Dr. Bugre. I know he will be willing to give comments. Dr. Kabele is there, will give EU perspective. I can also see our friend, our partner, Ms. Ananor, and I know she's also waiting to give a comment or to ask a question. Dr. Francisca is there, my friend Jesper is there. So let me come back to Mr. Peters. I will come back to our participants. Mr. Peters, over to you.
Thank you very much, sir. The question that was asked, that the person that asked the question said, if migrants were encouraged by Gaddafi regime before, during the year 2011, to say the fact, before 2011, I was there, and the truth is that migrants were encouraged by the regime of Gaddafi. Migrants were not only encouraged, so migrants were forced to travel from Libya to Italy. Now the question, why some of these migrants were forced, because I was there. I believe during that period, the late leader Gaddafi needs help from the European. He needs help from them, and what he needs from them, he did not receive it. And he promised, he said the European, they will actually understand what is going through with the migrants. In other words, he was speaking in a figurative expression. He will say, most of the migrants that I have in Libya, I will send them by force in Europe. So the European, they will understand what I'm facing. Or maybe by that, what I'm requesting from them, they will give it to me. So most of the migrants are forced to take the sea. Actually, there are some migrants that do not even have money. The military during those days, they will be going from one ghetto to another, because we call it a ghetto. You have many, and in this ghetto, it's by nationality. Maybe they will say this is a Sierra Leonean ghetto, this is for Malians, this is for Nigerians. So the police people, they know the ghettos. They will be going there, force people, come and load these boats, come and enter these boats. So actually the answer is yes. People were forced to travel before 2011. When I was there, as I said, I left the 10th of April 2011. Before I left, people were forced. I don't know about now. Then the second question by my brother, Almami Sila, the one from Mali, actually, I did not get it clearly. I did not understand what he was saying. For the second question by our brother, Almami Sila, I did not get him clearly, sir. So I cannot respond.
Okay, he's still here with us. You can ask the question again. Maybe if you will permit me to ask Dr. Ahmed Bugre. I know he has been working closely with the AU, the African Union, and Dr. Kabele is also here, who is in code the representative of the AU. Maybe they can provide the AU perspective, and I will later come back to our friend, Ms. Adanol, and Dr. Francisca, to provide the EU perspective in a way. Let's open up the discussion. Please, can you recognize Dr. Bugre?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. What a wonderful time to hear and listen to the story of our brother, which in my opinion represents largely the stories of many people that I have heard. I think that in terms of the motivation to travel for many people, of course, many people have got different reasons why they leave their countries. Our brother Peter has mentioned conflict as one of the main drivers, opportunities for young people as one of the key drivers also of why many of our brothers and sisters aim to reach Europe and to have an opportunity. And for some of them, it's actually a livelihood for them and their families. I think that if it comes to the African continental perspective, it is that there is, although there is the migration policy framework for Africa, which is a continental framework that the African Union has put following the Banjul common position on African migration and development. There has not been that development of this policy framework. So you tend to have not one voice, Africa not speaking with one voice when it comes to migration per se. Of course, migration within Africa, let's be reminded that 80% of those who are moving within the continent itself. It's very interesting to hear our brother Peter say that the first time that he left Sierra Leone, he went to Guinea-Conakry. And the situation in Guinea was not better. So he had to go to Libya with the aim that he would reach to Europe, which was a place of safety, but also which offers him also an opportunity to settle down. So migration or movement within Africa itself is very difficult. The situations in most countries facing young people is the same. So the neighbor who is there to bring this realization of this dream to come true. And of course, he has said that this is always a dream. The expectations might not be what people think. The people might think one thing and then go to Europe and face another. So the African position, there's sometimes no one voice when it comes to dialogue or discussion with the European Union, and that is because of funding. You know, most of our programs are dependent. Most of the programs, even within the African Union itself, is mostly dependent on European Union funding or European partner countries' funding of this issue. So there is an imbalance of power. So you can see that maybe Africans will go and discuss with the same voice, but then you will see that individual countries will take individual steps because of the funding opportunities that they get. So I think that Dr. Kabele will probably speak about this, but there's also now the Continental Protocol on the Free Movement of Persons, which, as you know, only 4 countries have signed, but only a few countries have ratified. Many countries are hesitant in ratifying the Free Movement Protocol. They were very, very quick to ratify the Continental Free Trade Agreement Protocol, but not the free movement, which is something that the African Union is now working, and Dr. Kabele and his team at the Department of Political Affairs have worked so tirelessly to get African member states to ratify. And I believe that if this protocol is ratified, it becomes the key then to the reduction of the irregular movements of people across the continent, because it opens up then the African continent for many young people then to be able to not only travel to other countries, but to also be able to reside and maybe study or work, because then it looks at employment. Why do many people go to Europe? Because of employment. In fact, when I used to live in Malta and work in the camp, the first thing that people leave the camp and they say is, I want a job. I want to work and remit money to my family and take care of them and take care of their school fees and take care of their medical fees or whatever expenses that they're facing. So I think that the ratification and the implementation of the African Continental Free Movement Protocol will be somehow provide also an opportunity to reduce irregular migration. But many African countries are hesitant to ratify this. So again, many young people are forced to take the perilous journey and put their lives at risk to reach Europe. And as we speak, Many young people are still trying it. I was listening to a story from Senegal. Many young people are still trying to cross into Europe, although the situation in Europe is becoming much more difficult for them. So I will speak from the Continental perspective in this way. In fact, as we speak, we are on a mission to Rwanda now in looking at the emergency transfer mechanism, where many and thousands of the people who are stranded in Libya and in Lebanon and in the Gulf countries can be repatriated to Africa. So it's a very complex, it's a very difficult thing for many countries to discuss in Africa. And I hope that with the passing of the Free Movement Protocol, there will be better intervention in this area. So I will stop here for now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ahmed Bugre, the Advisor Office of the Commissioner for Social Affairs at the African Union Commission in Addis Ababa. I know that Dr. Kabili Matlosa's hand has been up and he wants to put a voice to what Dr. Ahmed Bugre just shared with us. I've seen so many hands up. We'll call everyone. Just bear with us as we make progression. Dr. Matlosa, are you there?
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where we are throughout the whole world. Let me appreciate the very interesting insights shared by our two colleagues on the panel. Our colleague from Italy, I think, if I'm correct, Peters, and our colleague from New York, if I'm correct, Joy. We really appreciate this. I missed a lot of what the first speaker shared. I struggled a bit with connection, but it's okay. I listened to Joy, the entire presentation. And I think I would have loved to really have received the report before, so that when we comment, we have all the facts. At least I've listened to. So my comment is going to be confined to what I heard, not the report itself, Chair. I'm going to make only raise two issues. One relating to methodology, another one is conceptual. But before I get there, let me just do a footnote on Dr. Bugre's fascinating intervention from the African Union side. Just one small thing to say: if I were to be optimistic against all odds, I would suggest that maybe we have an interesting opening with the coming into force of the African free trade area, African Continental Free Trade Area, based in Accra, Ghana. Now it is up and running as from the 1st of January this year, and that if we want that initiative succeed, in my view, there's no way that we can have free trade succeeding without free movement, because free trade across borders, trade in services, capital, commerce, and all that requires also free movement of people, free movement of business people, free movement of workers. So I think when addressing migration challenges on the continent, there's no way we can ignore the Continental Free Trade Area. There's no way we can ignore the protocol on free movement of persons, right of residence, and right of establishment. So I just wanted to make that footnote to say, let's be mindful of these two initiatives that if well implemented, with political commitment behind them, then we may see, we may experience a sea change in terms of migration patterns on the continent and outside the continent. That's the footnote I want to make. But quickly on the presentation by Dr. Joy, it will be interesting. I listened carefully from A up to Z. fascinating information she has shared with us. It would be interesting to know from her what are the new insights that the report is bringing to the table. That the report is bringing to the table over and above what we know in the literature, over and above what other reports have done in the past. So if we could be, what is new? So what is new knowledge or policy advice that is coming from the report? It would be interesting. So we also look forward to reading it at some point anyway. And I think I saw that it has been shared. Now, secondly, finally, Dr. Adio, this is a conceptual one. My own work in this area, at least this is my own, I must declare, this is my own perception, really. It's not, I don't want to impose it to anybody else. It's a political economy approach. I found it very, very useful, at least to me. Now, because the political economy approach compels you to deal with the political and economic dynamics of the phenomenon of migration. Now, listening to Dr. Joy, my sense is that the emphasis tends to go more to the economistic determinants, economic determinants. That's why the conclusion she'll reach is that migration, irregular migration, happens primarily because of incomplete development. You see, so it will lead to a particularistic conclusion. Yet, in fact, there are a number of other factors outside the economic considerations that are important for irregular migration, besides just development. So I just wanted to make that comment to provoke our thinking further, and maybe Joy may want to also probably say a few things on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Dr. Joy, will you quickly respond?
Yes, I'd like to respond, especially also because of the agreement we had at the start that unfortunately I would have to leave after the hour, but really to thank very much Dr. Ahmed Bugre and Matlosa, Khabele Matlosa, who we have worked with in other configurations as well, for your reflections. Just a few points on, I think Ahmed was really giving an excellent commentary about the political economy, but also Khabele Matlosa. So I won't respond because I didn't pick up any questions. But on Khabele's point, I think that two things. One is trade is indeed a critical part of it. And I think the African Continental Free Trade Area opens a door, a new door, for the type of movement that supports and promotes a company's trade. And so when you think about the Protocol on Trade in Services of the African Continental Free Trade Area, and there is a unique type of movement of people for provision of services that has started to open up. I think you have at the last count about 34 African countries that have notified offers in the area of trade and services across 5 sectors that envisage people moving for purposes of services supply. So this is in the area of tourism, finance, transport, telecommunication, and a host of business services. So things will start to move. Things are starting to move. And so it's a question now of moving beyond tabling that offer into the enabling environments that actually make it happen. What happens when I see an offer in Senegal? I must be able to apply. It must be able to be effectively considered. I must be able to move in terms of that being recognized as a valid entry into Senegal. I must be able to establish, to operate, to send money home, to leave, and to come back if needed. So it's true that the AfCFTA will be that first space that starts to create opportunities for movement. But I think the way the offers typically go in trade agreements is that you tend to aim for the highest skilled. And we're not only looking at movement for the highest skilled. So we want a broadened space, which includes also semi-skilled and all types of skills. So you're not just talking about the lawyers and the engineers, but you're talking about a broader frame of people. But just to echo that point again, that indeed it's a good place to start. What is new? And then, of course, the other point I'd make there is that when we look at the way movement is taking place in Africa, within the regional economic communities, you already have a rights-based type of movement. You know, I'm East African, I'm Ugandan, I hold an East African passport. Literally, the West Africans can hold a West African passport. Why I say this is important because, you know, in Uganda, they're going through a process right now where when you apply for a passport, you no longer get the Republic of Uganda passports. You get East African Community, and then under that, Republic of Uganda. And that's important because it follows the earlier movements in the common market, which speak to the points that Ahmed was making, which is the right to enter, establish, the right of entry, the right of establishment, the right of residence. Now, what we need to do is to find a way incrementally for the continental level to catch up with those three rights. And I think that's what the protocol on free movement seeks to do. And that's why it must be pushed quickly towards full ratification so that it enters into force, because it will fill the gaps that are left when a trade agreement makes a contribution. It will democratize the space of movement much more. And once you do that, then of course protection comes into that case. So what is new in the UNDP report? One, the angle on irregular migration as it relates to development is the critical component of what is new. Because it's true, as you say, Habele, that there are many aspects that push people to move irregularly. That is why we had caveats at the start of the presentation, that this is about those who have moved, have been here, you know, since the last 6 months, for example, have told us specifically they're irregular, have not sought asylum, have, you know, there were so many caveats. So it's really that space of irregular movement as it relates to migration. And I think what's contributing to this and what's new is this question of also debunking a bit the perception that people move solely out of desperation. We're seeing the findings of the report, that in fact, these are people who have jobs at home. These are people who are educated. These are people who have higher aspirations than is available. And so they're moving because something better is possible. It is not to say it's the universe of why people move. It is to say that there is a particular group that is moving irregularly for the pursuit of development, and we need to start to find policy responses that speak specifically to them. So I think that is really the contribution. And again, to reemphasize the key message out of the report, which is that migration is a reverberation of progress in Africa. That Africa is progressing means people are improving, but it's not moving fast enough. And so it's outpacing the possibilities of what people want. And so they're moving into other places to try and get those dreams fulfilled. It is happening, it's not happening fast enough, and the benefits are not being evenly distributed. And that is a push factor. Development is a push factor. I think if I were to summarize it, perhaps that's the core of what is new. And so how do you use that dynamic to have a targeted policy response around irregular migration, understanding that they're there, understanding that the preventive approaches have not worked, understanding that we have to think about migration governance in a manner that protects these people, in a manner that recognizes their contribution, and in a manner that safeguards and harnesses a win-win solution for Africa and for Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joy. And I know that many people still want to ask one or two questions. I think maybe we will direct this. Ms. Ananol, will you rather want to speak and Dr. Joyce will respond now? Or I should read the later part of?
I think many people also want to hear from Joseph.
Yes, I know. I just want to finish with you, then we'll come back to Mr. Joseph. Or if Ms. Ananol doesn't want to speak, then I will have to turn back to Mr. Joseph Peters, and we can direct our questions to him. I can see one hand that is raised, and that's Pamela Moore.
Some of the things I want to say have to do with some of the points she raised. However, I'll go ahead, even if she's not there. I've found out that one of the things that encourages irregular migration is the monetary value of African countries. That is the exchange rate. What is Naira going for? For example, in 1983, when I came to, I'm speaking from Paris, when I came to France for a course in 1983, it was a 5-week course. I came with the basic traveling allowance of 400 Naira, and the amount I had was about $400 and something. And I can tell you today, 1983 till today is about 40 years. Not so, 40 years minus 2, 38 years ago. What 1 Naira, the value that 1 Naira had in that year is what 1 kobo has today. So if people are getting a lot of Naira for the few euros that they struggle to get here, it might be difficult to convince them that it is not worth traveling across the Sahara Desert or the sea. I always say of the Nigerians in Europe that most of them that do that is because they don't understand what the desert is. They do not know what the sea is. And it's foolishness of the highest order. I'm sorry, Mr. Peters, you had a reason, you had a cogent reason to leave your country. It's not the same thing with what I am, with the set of people I'm referring to. If they would leave, even between Nigeria and Libya, anybody in his right senses would not go on that kind of journey. But when they look at the monetary value, they would think it is worth it. When they see that they have no job in their villages where Total has destroyed their river and their land, they will feel it is better. When they look and they see that Boko Haram is harassing them and it's better to die in Europe than to die in the hands of Boko Haram, they would still go. But you find out that because the Naira has been so devalued, any small euro that you get from here makes a big deal. And that is why even their family members are looking up to them. We had a conference the other day. By the way, I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Sorbonne. We had a conference and somebody came from Italy and he said they were giving them 40 euro, either per month or per week, I don't remember. But from that 40 euro, they will still take some and send home. If the value of Naira was what it was supposed to be, they would have known that that 40 euro was meant to buy chocolates and biscuits. But unfortunately, they'll send it home and it will be a big thing. So right from the shores of Italy, right from 1 or 2 weeks, when they landed on the shores of Italy, they've started sending money home. And when they get here, some of them stay in Italy, some of them come to France, they will give them 200 and something every month. If they have accommodation, if they have free accommodation, if they don't have free accommodation, they'll give them 300. It used to be for 1 year, 4 months. And they would, after the 1 year, 4 months, they are likely to be rejected. They would ask them to leave the territory, the country. And most of them don't leave. It's an abrupt ending for them, because if you have taken 300 or 200 euro for 1 year, 4 months, 14 months, 1 year, 2 months, you wouldn't know it's going to end. So when the real crisis started about 2 years ago, they cut it down to 6 months. I don't know if they really tell them that we are just keeping you for the next 6 months. During those 6 months, they have no right to leave the French territory. I don't know if it's the same in Italy. And then those who are regular migrants that are working, that are good, they have good jobs and all, people at home might still depend on them because of the value of our money. So if the IMF and the African Union can come together and remove the burden of the devaluation of our monies, I'm sure it will help the African countries, because it still affects trade. Many African countries are still, at least in West Africa, the CFA is still tied to the apron of the euro of France. So they're still suffering under the yoke of the devaluation.
Thank you so much. I think I got the point, and I will actually allow Mr. Joseph Peters to respond to this. I know she's raising an important issue about some of the reason why people are leaving. Mr. Joseph Peters, can we listen to you?
Let me respond to my beloved Sister Pamela Moore. And she said people are leaving, and for her, some of them are supposed to stay at home. But one thing I want all of us to know, them that felt it knows it exactly what is going on. As I said, I leave my beloved country. We call my country Mama Salone. I leave Sierra Leone because of a purpose, and I believe many people, to mention it, the research that Dr. Joy just talked about, the finding of UNDP, that project, I was blessed. I was among the migrants that did the research in Italy. And after we did the research, we went to Copenhagen to talk about it. So I was among the migrants. We talked to many migrants, and most of them, they left their beloved country because of reasons which they mentioned to us. Some people, they leave their beloved country because of our government policy in Africa entrench people to deep poverty. When the system is not working, you can pay for light and you are not receiving the light. People are fleeing their country because of war, some people because of conflict. And my sister talked on a point that I want to emphasize on. There are some people, even in the camp, they used to give them 70 euro. From that 70 euro, they will send it back home. From there, some of them, we have some people, for example, they will be leaving the camp, not only in that they are 70 euro, they will be moving around doing because they came here for a purpose. They came here for a purpose. And some of them, their purpose is to search for money so they can go to an extent to find that money. I remember newly in the camp when 2011, you will see some girls, they will leave the camp in the morning for 2 or 3 days. They will be going out doing prostitution. I'm very sorry. They will get that money and they will send the money home back to their family. And one thing I want you to understand, them that felt it, understood it very well. There are some of our parents back home in Africa. They will say to their daughter, do what others are doing that is giving them money, go and do it. There are some people in that camp, they would dress well, snap, after sending 100 euro, 200 euro. Then they will even see their younger sisters to come and join them. And when the younger sisters come and join them, all what they will be doing in the road is not meant for somebody to do. But if you ask them the question, as I explained to Dr. Akinola yesterday, we are on a project moving around the street, searching for young girls that are forced to do what they are doing. Some of them, they will be saying, we are doing this because my family, they are in wretched poverty. So I need to come out from the family, carry the cross to do whatever I can do for my sibling to go to school, for my parent not to sleep with hunger. And what next? If you want to take them away from the street, you need to find them something to do. There are some people, I remembered in the camp, some of our African brother, that I will not mention the country that he came from. He went, he told somebody, he did not stop there, he killed the person, but they caught him, the Italian government caught him. In all what? He was finding money to send back home. There are people that we need to speak the reality. We need to tell our people back home. But most people, they leave their country again because some people, they leave because of they're searching for opportunities. So I believe our sister might be saying what she's saying. She's right. But I believe most people, they leave because they have many reasons. Like me, I live because of a political reason. That's why I was granted political asylum. My father died. I was in Europe. I felt the pain because he was my best friend. And my old mother, she's still there. I need to see my mother. But because of a reason, I'm just here. And I believe most of the migrants that are in Europe, they are just here because of a reason. Some of them, during the research, many of them, they were earning money back home. Many of them, they were living in a decent life. But see, most of them here now, even for them to have documents, most of your own brothers and sisters, some of them, they are sleeping on that train station. They do not even have 3 square meal food a day. But they are just sending picture, I'm living in Europe. But one thing, I believe everyone has a cause. Everyone has a purpose of taking that Red Sea. And most of it, some of us, we know the danger of taking that sea. Because you will be in the camp and the next news that you will hear that the boat that just left, everybody drowned in that sea. And you are still there. It's an option for you to say, I'm not going. But when you thought about your why factors of doing what you want to do, you have no option. You will say, let me just continue and go. So I believe that answers the question of Sister Pamela Moore.
Please, everyone that maybe do not have the opportunity to speak now, please kindly join us for the next set of the webinar, which will be in April. We have to end the event today. And I will invite my able friend, our partner, Dr. Jesper from the Nordic African Institute, to give a closing remark. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Akinola. First of all, I want to extend my gratitude to the 2 speakers, Mr. Joseph Peters and Dr. Joy Kategekwa. I think you brought very valuable insights to the discussion. I think that for me, Joseph Peters really reminded us first of the human consequences of irregular migration through his own touching story. But also he reminded us about the resilience and the resourcefulness of people who may have been categorized as irregular at some point in their life, but who have found a way to build a new life in a new place. And this is as human beings have been doing throughout history. So I think it's a very valuable testimony to the humanity and resourcefulness of migrants that are sometimes categorized as irregular. So thank you very much for that, Mr. Peters. And I do believe that the UNDP report echoes what migration research has been arguing for a while, but it does so in a very valuable way because it enables a direct dialogue with policy thinkers and with decision makers at the highest level. So what I think is the strength of the UNDP report, Scaling Fences, is primarily that it brings insights about migrants' lives and aspirations into direct conversation with policy thinking, which is sometimes difficult for researchers to do for various reasons. So I thought that these were two very valuable contributions, and I felt that the discussion added a lot of nuance to the presentations. I think we were able to treat, through these conversations, we were able to treat sort of the nuance and all the different aspects that come into the picture, not just the economic motivations for migrating, not just another sort of a tirade against unjust European politics, but a healthy mix of insights and perspectives that I think we can use to move forward. And as Dr. Akinola said, we will be doing so fairly soon again. We will organize a second installment of a meeting on the same theme of centering migrant voices. And we hope to be able to delve a little bit deeper into the dynamics of diaspora communities in Europe, probably raise some issues that were opened up by this conversation. So please look for our announcement in the next week or two regarding the date and speakers for the upcoming event. And I'd just like, on behalf of both the Nordic Africa Institute and the Institute for Pan-African Thought and Conversation, to thank you all very much for being here today and for contributing to our collective reflections around a very important issue in our time. So thank you for that. And thank you also to the University of Johannesburg for helping us with the technology and logistics. And in closing, just a sincere thank you to Dr. Akinola for chairing this seminar and the entire IPATC team for making this event possible. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you all soon again.
The University of Johannesburg, the future reimagined.